Good afternoon, Central Oregon and beyond. This is Josh from Josh Reports coming at you with the first ever episode of my new podcast, Apres Chats. This is going to be a podcast all about skiing, outdoors life, and just about all the fun things that we love to do. Out here in Central Oregon, we love to get outside and just enjoy some of those sunny day vibes. We like to get up into the mountains, we like to get out and play, but afterwards we all love coming down to town, sitting around the fire, cracking a cold one with the boys, and having those Apres Chats. Whether you're drinking a beer, a CBD beverage, or whatever it is you're into, get ready to sit back, crack a cold one, and get ready for some Apres Chats. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Josh coming at you with the first ever episode of my podcast, Apres Chats. If you are just stumbling upon this podcast and you have no idea who I am, firstly, that is absolutely insane to me because I feel like most people listening to this are coming here because I posted it on Josh Reports. But if you don't know me, my name's Josh. I make reports. You can find my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or YouTube at Josh Reports. It's a daily independent snow report in the winter and a stoke report in the summertime. Just a super good vibe. Picture an auctioneer giving you your weather report. And we're just here for the good vibes and the encouragement and all sorts of fun all around all the time. But I'm delving into the world of podcasting, and so this is Apres Chats. This is going to be a podcast all about outdoor sports, skiing, snowboarding, all the fun Central Oregon activities we love to do, all the other fun activities outside of Central Oregon, and just kind of all the good vibes featuring local athletes, local homies, just about anybody in between. We're going to be having a fun time. We're going to be sitting down and talking. And on the first ever episode of Apres Chats, I have my very good friend Hannah Matranga here. She is... well, I'll let her tell you about herself. Hannah, go ahead and let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Well, in the spirit of matching your introduction, my name Hannah. I do snowboards.
Nailed it.
Sorry, I don't know if you meant to introduce yourself that way or if the apostrophe S just fell off.
Well, I thought I said I make reports.
You said my name Josh. I do reports.
I thought I said names, but I might have not. Anyways, everybody, this is Hannah. She's a very good friend of mine, a local professional snowboarder. She's in the competition scene, the guiding scene, the outdoor scene, but I will let her tell you all about herself.
Hey, my name's Hannah. I do ride here at Bachelor about, 150-ish days a year. A little bit less this year since I've been traveling a lot for competitions. But yeah, I just started competing this year on the more professional free ride circuit. I also am a backcountry guide, alpine and splitboard mountaineering guide, as well as a very, very part-time snowboard instructor, involved in snow sports in the more community-oriented way in a lot of different avenues, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, just forewarning to the listeners, if you hear some sniffling and coughing, it is full-blown allergy season here in Central Oregon, so I might be doing a little bit of that right now. But we're going to push through. We're going to get this going. So like you said, to start off, you just finished your day at the Snake Run Rally. This has been your first season as a full-blown competitor, especially in IFSA-style competitions, but you did do a couple competitions last year, including the Big Wave and the Snake Run, and this was your return to the Snake Run. How did you feel this year? How did it compare to last year? And how was your weekend?
My weekend was great. The Snake Run Rally is probably one of the best events in Central Oregon, in my opinion. It's a hugely community-oriented event. It's a lot of healthy competition. Everybody's there shit-talking each other, having a great time. Hoodoo puts on an awesome event for us, provides us with a great space to just let loose and have a great time and be ourselves. And for me personally, I did not make it into finals this year. Just a little bit of a bummer. Last year I did make it into finals. Not really sure how that happened because I definitely felt like I rode better this year. And last year I was super sick. Maybe
it was the fever state delirium just sending it down the course last year.
It must have been because I really barely remember anything. It was a blizzard last year. We got 3 feet of snow in 2 days. My van was snowed in every morning. We were digging it out. I pretty much only left my van for 20 minutes each day to do my run, and then went back to my little fever dream, like puppy. But yeah, aside from that, the biggest difference for me this year was just the head game around competing in and of itself. Last year, the only two competitions I did were big wave and snake run, which are pretty both, like low stakes local competitions, but it still was, I hadn't competed in anything in it like at all since, like high school sports. And it's entirely different as well, like being up there on your own as opposed to like the team sports that I did growing up. And so the nerves that I felt last year, just like jittery, shaky, super stressed out at the top. And then this year with a full season of competitions under my belt, being able to be like a lot more calm and collected and present and aware of what was going on in the course instead of just like feeling like I blacked out for 30 seconds and got to the bottom and who knows what happened. So
Yeah. So as you said, you had a lot more competitions under your belt this season, and this was your first year as an IFSA competitor, competing in freeride snowboard competitions all around the country. How was that experience for you? How was that first competition's nerves compared to your first time at Big Wave, for example?
way worse. Yeah, I wish that it was just that, every competition was the same and you got a little bit less nervous every time. But yeah, no, my first IFSA competition had like the big wave and snake run last year had nothing on how I felt going into that. I guess first off, for anyone who doesn't know, IFSA is the International Free Ski and Free Ride Association. And so it's kind of like the predecessor to like the more commonly known Free Ride World Tour, or something along the lines of natural selection if you're familiar with that. And essentially the way it works is we have there's regional competitions, the Free Ride World qualifiers, and if you place high enough in qualifiers, you go to challengers, and then that's how you end up on the Free Ride World Tour. So I'm competing in the Free Ride World qualifier events, hoping to get onto the tour potentially someday.
Awesome. And you competed in 6 of those this season, with Wolf Creek being your first one, but you definitely had a bit of a ride to get there. And this is, to be fair, and in all honesty, our second take of this. This is my first time doing this podcast with brand new equipment, and I accidentally didn't save the recording on the last one. So we've already kind of touched on this. So, I already kind of know Hannah's experience on this first stop in the competition at Wolf Creek, Colorado, but it was literally coming right off the tails of a backcountry hut trip we had in Eastern Oregon. And you drove multiple days just to get straight to this competition venue, just to compete in your first competition, with what sounds like very minimal info. Like, how was that experience showing up for the first time, delirious, tired, and ready to compete?
I was wildly stressed. I don't know what I would have done without Connor. He was definitely like my rock for those 3 days, like of driving, or I guess like I don't, yeah. So it was essentially we left Central Oregon, or Eastern Oregon, I should say. We left Eastern Oregon on a Friday evening after many debacles in and of itself with that, a broken down van, everybody in different places, trying to like rent you guys trying to rent
my
a
portion
box.
of a group rented a U-Haul to drive back to Bend in.
Yeah.
It's quite a story in and of itself.
Yeah, so there's all that going on, and then Connor and I are like, well, fuck, how do we help? We gotta go. Like, I have to be in Colorado in like less than 48 hours. So yeah, we left that night, hauled to Salt Lake City, slept in one of Connor's friends' basements, got like just enough sleep to get us up the next morning, do our laundry from the hut trip. Connor had to get an oil change on his car, and then like continued the haul to Southwest Colorado. Made it to Pagosa Springs at about 9 o'clock that evening, with needing to be up around like 5 a.m. the next day for my competition. Pivoted from the plan of sleeping in the back of Connor's Subaru with all of our wet shit from the last week to thankfully like splurging the $95 that it cost to get a hotel. But that stuff adds up. It's an expensive thing I'm doing.
It does.
So yeah, we finally like splurged, got the hotel, and when Connor and I both ate. God, it was I don't know why we did this, but we We both had like 2 frozen TV dinners each that we microwaved in the hotel, which probably did not help my nausea that I was already experiencing for 24 hours leading up to that due to
And
my nerves.
I was gonna say, how much of that nausea do you think was nerves for the competition, and how much of it do you think was just pure exhaustion from the 48 hours before the competition?
I'm gonna go with like 10% exhaustion, 80% nerves, and 10% TV dinners.
Ah, the skier life. Um, yeah, so you showed up to Wolf Creek. You competed in that. How did that competition go for you?
Way better than I was expecting, honestly. Like yeah, we got there. Connor's parking, like he's getting ready at the car, and I'm like, well, I don't even know. Wolf Creek's not that big. There's like 4 buildings, but I still didn't know which building to go to. And I get up there and finally find where I'm supposed to be, go to the athlete meeting, and I'm like decked out. I've already got on like my helmet, goggles, boots, like spine protector. I get up there into the like the meeting area, and everyone else is just like casually chilling in their line booties, like it's still drinking their coffee, and I looked like such a goober just like showing up fully ready to ride. And but I didn't know. I didn't know if there was going to be anywhere to leave something. Are there lockers? Are there cubbies? Is there like a safe place to put my gear? Do I need to like be ready? No one tells you anything. And then the meeting happens, and there's like very little information even in this meeting that's intended to prepare everyone. And then I get on the lift, and my binding's loose. I don't have a screwdriver, and I'm like,
Hannah, your binding's always
it's
loose.
always loose. I don't know. Somebody needs to get me new bindings. Who wants to sponsor me on bindings? Um, but yeah, I'm like flagging down people on this. So we take the lift up, and then it's a little bit of a skate, and then I don't know, maybe like a 20-ish minute hike. Which like shouldn't be that big of a deal, but I like forget that I have deacclimated from living in Colorado, and hiking even 20 minutes at 13,000 feet is much different. So I'm dying hiking up this thing, trying to like flag down people and be like, you got a screwdriver in your backpack. And like finally someone took pity on me and gave me a screwdriver, and someone else took pity on me. And I was, found this really nice married couple, and I was like, you guys know what you're doing? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for unless you get an inspection run. You get to like go through the course and look at everything before you actually run it, so you can like see what your landings are like, make sure you're not going to land on another cliff or something. And this course was pretty weird in general. Like you couldn't see most of the course from where you dropped in. And so it was really difficult to like, your options were to either go straight down these like cool chutes or go down the ridge. And then there was some really interesting cliff bands, but it was like if you didn't nail your entrance into the trees, then you might come out at the wrong place on the cliff bands and then be entirely cliffed out.
Well, that's not what you want.
And that's what I wanted to do. And then thankfully, like, ended up with this really nice couple who'd been doing this for a while. And they're like, yeah, maybe, like, don't do that on your first competition because you have no idea where you're going. And so they kind of like took me under their wing and like taught me what it means to inspect a course and what I should actually be looking for. And I like kind of listened, and then of course like ended up doing something entirely different than what I inspected anyways. But I somehow came out second, which was pretty exciting for my first competition. I was not expecting that at all. There's 5 podium spots in IFSA, so when they called out like 5th and 4th, I was like, fuck, I did so much worse than I thought I did. And then I got second, so it was it was really exciting. It was
Very
really
cool.
like mind-blowing to podium at my first ever like, competition in the discipline that I'm wanting to do.
Right. No, that's super exciting. So then your season continued. You had a few more competitions, 6 in total. I was fortunate enough to make it up to your Crystal Mountain Resort competition, which was your second to last. And by that time, to no surprise by me, you had done an amazing job of building yourself a community with all these different riders. And for anyone who doesn't know Hannah, she's definitely very good at including people and just creating a circle around her just about anywhere she goes. Really cool people. So how was like beyond the competition vibe throughout the course of the season? Obviously you went into that first one knowing nobody there, and by the last one you were kind of re-seeing the same people weekend after weekend in different locations, kind of competing with them, but also like getting to ride these resorts with them. And like, how was that community aspect of the competition for you?
It was so cool. I was so nervous going into it, thinking that, everybody at these competitions was going to be so much better than me, and like all these pros, and no one was going to want to hang out with me or talk to me, and like I was like, am I even supposed to am I supposed to try to make friends with these women, or are we like competing, like, or like, do we share beta, do we not share beta? I don't know what's going on. And learned pretty quickly that for the most part everybody's really willing to help you out. Everybody's like stoked to be at the bottom and cheer you on. When we're up at the top, like all the ladies getting ready for our heats, everyone's like, wait, what's your name? Oh, Hannah, Swick. And then you'll drop and everyone's like, yeah, Hannah, like cheering for you, and like you just met 30 seconds ago. But yeah, everybody's excited down at the bottom. Everybody's like, there's no animosity, there's no ego about it, really. Like, it's an awesome community. It is really cool running into people again and again at the same competitions. And especially like with a lot of us who were in our first season competing, ended up, being at a lot of the same competitions, because there is like a little bit of a hierarchy into like what you can get into with how many points you have, and so on and so forth. And so like a lot of the newer competitors, getting to see them at the same places, and like made friends with a guy in Alaska and ended up picking him up at the airport 2 weeks later in Washington to go to Crystal. And yeah, and then like made some friends with a couple other like young like 19-year-old kids in Alaska. And then when I showed up in Whistler, they were like waiting at the bottom for me when I came out of my run to cheer me on, and like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was so sweet.
So shifting away from like the traveling competitive vibe, how does that compare to like the local community? Like we said, you just finished the Snake Run Rally, and here at Bachelor, or Central Oregon, not specifically Bachelor, Snake Run's at Hoodoo, but here in Central Oregon, there's kind of three main competitions. There's the Dirksen Derby, the Big Wave Challenge, and the Snake Run Rally, as far as like snowboard community events go. But I've heard you talk before, and on the previously accidentally deleted version of this podcast, that there is more of, that local community vibe versus the traveling community vibe. And just, kind of compare and contrast, like, what was the atmosphere like differently compared to, the competitors that you're seeing once every couple weeks in different locations versus the people that you were riding with today that you're probably going to see up on Mount Bachelor tomorrow?
Yeah, and it's really cool having like the local community as well, because similarly, there's very little, in my experience, as well, ego, and the competition still is very friendly. There's not any like animosity in it, similarly to the free ride competitions. And I think there's a lot more shit talking that goes on at these local competitions, since everybody knows each other and like has some rapport there to be able to interact that way. And a lot more partying generally at the local competitions.
I heard some stories about karaoke last night in the Hoodoo Lodge.
That was something I'm really curious whether Hoodoo's gonna let that happen again next year or not. But yeah, no, the overall, like, both of the communities are really phenomenal and supportive. I think it's a little bit different being on the free ride circuit, since there's such a common goal there. There's far fewer just casual competitors and people that want to try it out. Like, generally the people coming to free ride are there for a purpose. They've got like a larger goal being on this circuit, and so I think that there's a lot of camaraderie that comes along with that, that you don't experience as much in these competitions. Plus there's a lot more competitors generally in these local competitions. Like the free ride stuff, they keep it smaller.
I mean, for example, Snake Run Rally today, there was 50 plus women and probably like 250 plus men.
Versus, I believe that it was around like 300 competitors, yeah.
Versus the competition I saw up in Crystal, there was 5 women that signed up total.
It's small.
And like 25 men or something, or 50 men or something like that. Just way smaller numbers, like, by a multitude. But no, that is really cool. Obviously, like the free riders, they're there to compete, and they're there to win, and they're there to try to achieve their goals as a competitor. And in that vein, we're near the end of this season. Your competition season is wrapped up for the time being. What are some of your goals looking towards next year as a competitor, between local events, between traveling more? I know this season you've been competing in primarily 2-star events, but, you actually have points on the board now, so you can start moving up in those rankings. Like, talk to us a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve for yourself in the 2024-2025 winter season.
Yeah, so with freeride with IFSA, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4-star competitions, and they're ranked based on how many points winning is worth, and how difficult the venue is, and as well as like what you need, how highly ranked you need to be already in the IFSA to get into those competitions. So I had to start with Wolf Creek being a 1-star because they're first come first serve rather than getting in based on your ranking. So then once I had points from Wolf Creek, then I could start doing 2-star events. But it was a lot of the earlier season comps are like the higher, like the 3 and 4-star events happen pretty early. So I wasn't ranked high enough to get into them at that point. And you only have your points from your top 3 scores counted towards your ranking. So that means that essentially, like, even if I placed first in 3 2-star events, I will likely still have less points than someone who has gotten 1 first place in a 4-star.
Gotcha.
So in order to get into the challengers at the end of the season, which is how you secure yourself a place on the Freeride World Tour, you need to have a certain number of points, and it's borderline impossible. Not impossible, someone did it. But it is borderline impossible to get onto challengers without competing in 3 and 4-star events. So my goal next year, now that I have points and have a ranking, I'm currently 28th in North America for women's snowboard. I would like to start out next season getting into like the earlier season, like the kicking horse and the oh my god, where my brain is gonna blank right now on the other Canadian resort that happens early. But anyways, the earlier season competitions that what was that?
Is that Revelstoke?
Yeah, thank you, Revelstoke. Yeah, so I'd like to get into those contests earlier in the season and be able to boost my ranking getting into 3 and 4-star events so that I can potentially get onto challengers next season.
That would be extremely exciting. I definitely, especially if you make it to challengers, I'm gonna be there watching. But obviously, I'm gonna try to make it to at least another competition next year. But moving away from the competitive scene, which you've obviously done very well for yourself in your first season doing it. You're also an extremely accomplished mountaineer. You are a mountain guide for SWS. You're an amazing backcountry snowboarder. And you've pushed into that world significantly. Specifically, this season, obviously we had our annual backcountry hut trip out in Eastern Oregon, but you also just recently took a trip out to the Steens with a group of people doing some really cool backcountry stuff out there. How has your backcountry season been? I know a little limited based on competing so much, but touch on how your season has been in the backcountry this year.
Yeah, it's been lacking a little bit for sure, as you mentioned, both the time away competing as well as the financial obligation to actually work when I am home. I was able to do some really cool side country up in Alaska when I was up there competing at Eagle Crest. Did some, definitely not backcountry, side country for sure, but like some really cool hike to terrain out there that I was excited about. And then, this trip I just got back from was a 5-day excursion out to the Steens Mountains, which was really incredible. We had a little to be determined how that's all going to play out, but it was some work that we were doing for Patagonia, to do some visual storytelling, and shooting out there in the Steens. That was a bucket list item for me. Like I went out to the Alvord Desert before I moved to Bend, and I remember sitting at the foot of the Steens and looking up there and being like, holy shit, like, do people ski these? And I wasn't with anyone that was from here, so they're all like, we don't know. Well, and I immediately was like on Mountain Project, on like any beta site I could find, being like, who skis these things? And there's not a lot of beta out there, but the more I asked around, the more I'm like hearing whispers of, like people have done this and that. And I found a few, like Sadie and Stratton had a trip report they did for Strafe Outerwear 2 seasons ago out there, and there's some stuff that's gone on out there, a little bit of online presence about it, and going out there was incredible. Spending 5 days out in one of the bowls there, camping and like ticking off some different big couloirs and objectives out there, and I think, like, to the best of my knowledge, the research I've done so far, is that we were the first female descent of some of these couloirs that we did. So
That's really badass.
someone please correct me if I'm wrong, if you know more about, like, what's going on out in the steams. But from what I've been able to find online, I think that we were the first known female descent of some of these couloirs.
That is very, very cool. And speaking of, first female descents, things kind of along those lines. I mean, you guide with SWS, which is a really cool organization, and you're starting to do some more stuff with them. You're starting to do some more women-only trips through SWS, and here locally, you have had your part in starting a local organization called Batchy Baddies. Talk to me a little bit about both guiding and women in the outdoors, and how you've been using your positions more recently to, like, really help encourage that and help that grow.
Yeah, so guiding, specifically I work for SWS Mountain Guides, stands for Sierra Wilderness Seminars. We're based out of Mount Shasta, California, but we guide all over the place, including but not limited to running the Catski Bailey operation, teaching avalanche courses out of Crater Lake, Mount Lassen, Mount Shasta, and down in Las Vegas. If anyone's trying to do a Las Vegas avalanche course, that is a thing we do on Mount Charleston. So we teach single day ice axe clinics, we teach avalanche courses, we do like guided summit trips on Shasta and a number of other surrounding mountains. And my co-guide Beck and I started pushing really hard this year for having, like, women's only courses and talking to our employers about the importance of women's spaces in the outdoors. And they thankfully have been really supportive of that, and started opening, like, women's only intro to ski mountaineering courses for Beck and I to teach. We've just partnered with Alpinista Adventures for a few more women's only courses this summer, and that seems to be something that is going to be growing and doesn't appear to have any. Oh, why did I just entirely lose my train of thought? It doesn't appear to be going anywhere. It seems to be something that's only going to keep growing within the community and the organization. And then, Batchy Baddies more locally. So we're a women's ski and ride collective that I started alongside Christina Anderson, who's the skier counterpart of that. And our goal with doing that was essentially just to create more space for progression and support in women's snow sports. And we started out with the objective of making a place for women to come and learn park, because, like, that's such a, in my opinion, still, like, unapproachable thing, even within a relatively unapproachable sport in and of itself.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of success with that, and then we've been expanding into backcountry stuff through that. Through, like, my experience guiding, I feel really comfortable taking people out in the backcountry. We did an intro to touring course a couple weeks ago, where we had a bunch of people that had never been in the backcountry before show up and get they had demos that they got from between evergreens, and they were again talking about, like, community support. Between evergreens was really awesome in setting up a lot of our participants with discounted demos to make that more accessible. Really appreciative of local businesses that have been supportive of us in that way. And so everybody was able to show up, learn how to like use their board, like, so many things that you don't even think about if you haven't been out before. The fact that you have to take your board apart and, like,
the idea of
swap.
putting the bindings on correctly.
Yeah, put the bindings on the right way. That you swap it so it's not, like, still looking like a board.
I mean,
some of my outside.
Some of my very experienced backcountry friends still frequently put their bindings on backwards at the top of the mountain before they ride down.
Oh, I wonder who that might be.
There's a few of them.
Not me, that's for sure. We're got another backcountry course going out this coming Wednesday that's, like, a step up from this intro to touring course. It's going to be a lot more people that have avalanche experience and education, and we're planning on going out to the Three Finger Jack Zone and exploring some stuff out there. So
very exciting.
Really, really stoked about the this is really the main reason that I was interested in even pursuing a position in a more professional realm in the snow sports industry, was so that I had influence and ability to make space for other women, and it's been really cool to see that come to fruition like so relatively quickly.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, it's brand new this season and you're already doing some really cool stuff with it. And as this season's kind of starting to wind down, it's getting closer and closer. Like, what are some of your goals for Batchy Baddies, but also your personal goals as a guide coming into both the summer, next season, how you want to see these things continue to grow, how you want to continue to take your space in this industry? What are your plans moving forward?
Batchy Baddies, our big thing right now is trying to make connections and collaborations with women in other industries in the area. So for the month of April, we were doing our best to like do a collaboration every meetup with another like local business or local woman who has like a talent or skill that they're interested in sharing. So we're doing some collaborations with yoga teachers. We're doing some collaborations with artists. We're doing some collaborations with different like breweries. I think we're working on getting like a knitting class going and a pottery class. And so like just trying to highlight and lift up like other local women's businesses.
Very cool.
And I'm excited to have more to like have a little bit more holistic approach to everything we're doing, as much as we all like love skiing and snowboarding, that there is like, still room for
there's a balance
for
in
community and like relationship building outside of just being at the mountain, and like ways that we can tie that in. So we're working on a lot of that kind of stuff right now. We're also working on being more officially partnered with Mount Bachelor, which is exciting because that's going to open a lot of doors for what we're able to offer. A couple of things we have in the works for next season is having like dedicated woodward coaches come once a month to Batchy Batty meetups and offer like formal instruction in the park. In a way that's like legal and sanctioned and not just like,
silly laws,
off the books tips. So I'm excited about that one. We're also working with Bachelor to hopefully be able to use some of the competition venues that get built under Pine Marten Lift to women's only competitions, and hopefully having like a women's rail jam and a women's slope style competition, and like kind of in the same vein as like the women's progression sessions that Woodward has been doing, but like fueled by Batchy Baddies and like open to anyone and everyone, and hopefully with like actually monetarily valuable prizes. So that, because even with these local competitions, something as like low stakes as snake run is still really intimidating to go to if you aren't involved heavily in the community or have experience.
Definitely feels
competing.
Like a cool kids club sometimes when you walk up and all the people that have been to every single snake run for the last however long are all kind of grouped together, and then there's everyone else.
Yeah, and
they're all very welcoming and cool people at the end of the day, but it can definitely be scary to walk up to that scene for sure.
Yeah, no, and it's like certainly never like intentionally exclusionary, and all of those people like have been so welcoming to me in the past like 2 years that I have been here. But I want to create a space that like doesn't have any of that built in yet, where it's everybody's first time. Something that's brand new and a thing that's like really approachable and easy for people to come do. And yeah, on the guiding front, I'm gonna keep working with SWS to have more women's only courses, and my big goal for next summer, not this coming summer, but the next summer's guiding, is to be able to actually offer scholarships for the women's courses. So that's something I'm in conversation with SWS about, to figure out how that can be realistic and like what we have to do to make that happen and make those courses more accessible as well. But for now,
any personal goals for guiding for yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to transition kind of out of this alpine guiding world and more into ski guiding. As well as like I've learned that I really enjoy education more than I do guiding specifically. I think that I really thought that guiding would have a lot more crossover with education, but it turns out a lot of people are not particularly interested in learning.
A lot of people just want someone to take them up a mountain and take them back down and call it good.
They don't want to learn anything. They just want to go stand on the summit and get taken down. So I'm exploring what that looks like for me to potentially get more into like the avalanche instructor role and like teaching avalanche courses. I already teach like ice axe clinics and assist in avalanche courses, but yeah, exploring what that looks like for me to be in more of an official educational role more than a guiding role.
Yeah, makes sense. So we're getting close to the end of the podcast here. I've got a couple more questions for you. First and foremost, anybody who has ever watched any Josh Reports ever knows at the end of every video, there's just a nice little reminder to don't forget to enjoy every day. So, how do you enjoy every day?
Besides being on my snowboard, I think for me it's a big, well, snowboarding, my community, my friends, and then like remembering to just like chill out every once in a while as well. And like
I'm bad at that.
I know, and I am so bad at having any kind of routine and any kind of like normalcy in that realm, but like starting every morning with like that perfect cup of coffee, so important to me, gets my day going right, like, and not just like, oh, I need caffeine, but like experiencing like the smell of the coffee in the morning and the taste of the coffee. And
I don't know why that just brought me back to my college freshman year. Every day down in the dorms, I would go down, get my weird little breakfast sandwich that I had to make me, and a thing of chocolate milk. And I would start my day with like 4 gulps off of the chocolate milk. And it was something about just that flavor, the profile, feeling that cold milk go down the throat. Like, it is like those weird little things, those weird little moments that you just kind of hold on to. And now every time I drink a chocolate milk, I think about that moment in my life. I don't do that every morning anymore. Now it's coffee, but
yeah, good coffee, good friends, good snow, stinky dog breath.
Stinky dog breath. Yep. Hannah's dog Bailey definitely has some stinky breath. I've spent quite a few mornings cuddling with that puppet while Hannah was off on competitions and traveling. And I love that dog dearly, but man, that breath. So one last question for you before we wrap this up. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of support, both locally, community, friends, sponsors, local businesses and stuff. Who would you like to give some shout outs to at the end of this episode?
The most important is my local community for sure, and you being a very large part of that. Even long before I was competing, you've been taking care of Bailey for me when I've needed to travel for work or travel for fun or like, you know, go to all of these trainings and
well, thankfully Bailey and Dottie
so
get
many
along
things.
great, so
But yeah, that, I mean, you know, this silly saying that it takes a village is usually applying to someone raising their child, but for me, like, making any of this stuff happen in a professional realm, like guiding, competition, whatever, has like, I could not have done any of this by myself. And like having people, mainly you, and then for the last year, like having Zach around as well, taking care of Bailey, has been like wildly helpful to me and obviously to her, to not be like going to boarding facilities. And that has made all of this like a tangible reality for me, and also like not feel like a shitty dog parent abandoning my Bailey all the time. So that's going to be my huge one. Then the just the amount of support and encouragement from my friends. Like, you know, it's such a wild thing to me that I'm even competing, having not been snowboarding for very long, and having the confidence from all of you guys, like all last year when I was talking about like, oh, maybe I'll compete, like in the studying at the beginning of the year, my goal, like I'm going to do one competition and it's going to be snake run. And then all of a sudden I'm in IFSA, and like a large part of that is, you know, people like you and Connor and Jen and everyone just constantly telling me that I am good enough and better than I think I am. And it's not crazy to think that I could go and do these things. Then yeah, outside of that, big shout out to Powder House for keeping my board running this year, even when it was falling apart. I beat the shit out of it on rocks and rails and staircases. And
this whole time I thought I was very brutal on my skis, and then I watched your snowboards.
Every time I go in there, they're just like, what the fuck have you done this time? But amazingly enough, my board is still kicking. Big shout out to them, to all the shop guys. Thank you. And yeah, my board sponsor coalition, if you haven't heard of them before, please go check them out. They're an incredible women-owned company manufacturing snowboards and skis, and doing a ton for increasing the exposure and representation of women's snow sports. And gave me a lot of opportunities this season beyond just like being a team rider, finding ways for me to be more plugged into the community, educational opportunities, helping me start our Untamed Tuesdays that I was doing, which was even kind of like a predecessor to like leading into the creation of Batchy Baddies. So yeah, big
Very
thanks
cool.
to them as well.
Awesome. Well, big thanks to you, Hannah, for coming and sitting down with me for 2 podcast episodes this afternoon after competing in the Snake Run Rally all weekend and just a good day today. I know we were all very exhausted by the time we got back down here. And for the first podcast to not record and then have to sit down for a second, huge thank you for sticking around to make this happen. As I've said, this is the first ever episode of of Apres Chats by Josh Reports. That's me. Josh. I make report. No, it's been super fun. This has been something I've been wanting to work on for a while. Truth be told, this podcast inception was originally going to be near the beginning of the season, but as I'm sure you could tell by how Hannah's been talking about her season and knowing the extent I go to make Josh report sometimes, things don't always go to plan and we end up being very busy. But the plan is to be recording these podcasts about once a week and trying to release them about that frequency as well. I'm going to make sure I get a couple more in the books before I start releasing. There's about a month and a half left in the ski season right now. So if you are hearing this and the ski season's still rolling, come and say what's up. You'll find me in the Skyliner parking lot next to the big white ambulance with the black duct tape over the sides of it. That is my house. That is my location. That is my home base. And I'll be up on Bachelor pretty much every day between now and closing. Of course, Ronda Van's coming up, so definitely come and say what's up to me over there. Should be a super fun rest of the season. I really look forward to making more of these podcasts. Give it a like, give it a follow, subscribe, do all those fun things that help me continue to do what I am doing. The more you guys support this, the more I can keep these going. And most importantly, my friends, do not forget to enjoy every day, y'all. Peace.